This is a special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk with Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Will Pelagic.
And we welcome you into Sports Talk and a special edition of SC Wild here on South Carolina Radio Network. Again, your host, Will Pelagic, along with the Captain Billy Downer here with you on this Tuesday, the 3rd day of July, 2018. Chatting to you not only about the world of sports, but the outdoors here in the Palmetto State. And as we come across the Independence Day, Captain, we obviously focus on a lot of the safety issues around what we will have here for South Carolina's Independence Day celebration. A lot of that revolves around what goes on across the water.
That's correct. South Carolina, remember, folks don't know this, but 460,000 acres of lakes, 8,000 miles of rivers, 3,000 miles of coastal water, a lot of water to boat on, and July 4th tends to be one of our heavier boating weekends. People in this state love to go to the water, so we expect to see a lot of boats tomorrow.
I was out on the water last week, and I've spent some time not only in Myrtle Beach and Charleston, and just knowing on the offshore. I was kind of getting myself acclimated with some of the things that you had talked about as far as some of the offshore fishing, people being, courteous and things of that nature. I noticed some people weren't exactly as courteous as they might be as far as on the water. But again, the one thing that I find different about the way things are versus, being up at Myrtle Beach versus being down in Charleston and Hilton Head, sometimes you get different seas, you get different currents. And of course, one part of the sea might have some choppy water. Other parts of the sea might be very calm as well.
Correct. Depends on the points, depends on where your currents are. Offshore, of course, northeasters your worst because the wind blowing in, got all the ocean to come across. But when you're inshore, it just depends on points. And other places you can get tucked behind out of the wind to help you out. It'll smooth the water out. So there's always inshore, usually a place to find that's smooth. Lake, same way. It depends on your lake, what particular lake. Lake Marion, wind coming from the dam's always the worst. But then other lakes, it just depends. If you get behind an island, you can tuck in there and find a nice calm spot to sit out there and get out of the wind and enjoy the day.
Of course, if you have a question for us about whether it's boating safety or even the world of sports, you can give us a call, 800-956-7266. Tweet us at SportsTalkSC. We're with you here for the 2 hours here on our special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk. I know, of course, you're a big football fan, so you're obviously getting ready. We're 2 months away from football getting ready to start.
Yes, we are. And I know all the Clemson, Carolina fans are now kind of jockeying for position to see who's going to be the best player, who's going to get the newest best player. I know you said there's a couple announcements waiting right now.
Yeah, we got one coming up tomorrow for Clemson, possibly. Clemson is looking at a quarterback target out of Richmond, Virginia. They've already got somebody in the 2019 class signed at quarterback, but they might be trying to get angled toward a second one, though he looks like he could be a Notre Dame lean. And, of course, South Carolina has the Chris Steele announcement possibly pending, although many people still believe he's a strong Southern Cal lean after the premature report from Rivals.com a couple of weeks ago. We'll get to that more in the big recruiting report. Just your thoughts as we sit here generally about the two schools. Clemson coming off of a third consecutive trip to the playoff, and obviously with the way things went last year against Alabama, notwithstanding, still a very successful season. In South Carolina off of its first trip to a New Year's Day bowl since 2011.
Yep. So I mean, again, I've got to go ahead and admit now, of course, Phil's going to wish he was here for this. I told you off air, I'd have to tell him he was right. He predicted the Hunter Johnson move.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to give that up to him. He was right. I hate to see a young man like that go. Quality player, just a good young man all the way around. But, as we talked about, Clemson's that team now that's got they've gone to 3 national championships in a row. Their program's at a level now where they are recruiting that tier 1 player every time. And after a while, you're going to get so many those top quarterbacks, somebody's going to want to not be in third place anymore.
Well, one thing I was saying yesterday with a lot of these teams that come out of the woodwork here, kind of like Georgia did last year, a team that was a perennial underachiever, and a team like Florida is going to get a lot of juice coming out of the season after hiring Dan Mullen. But it's weird, they're in the very unfamiliar spot of having to possibly play the role of the spoiler and upset the apple cart. But so is South Carolina, because South Carolina will have something to say about that in that game in the swamp late in November.
Well, certainly Carolina is getting their feet back under them, no doubt about it. Coach has got that team kind of running on all 4 cylinders again, and just rolling, basically really running on, just really doing well, being confident, being consistent. That's something they've lacked, I think, in the last few years.
Of course, a lot of this will go about the boating safety here on SC Wild. Our telephone number, 800-956-7266. So basically, a lot of this will be a review for a lot of our listeners,
Sure.
but I know that one thing that people don't understand is how you get to become in the boater education realm. What do you have to have as far as a certification to be on the boats? What is the law as it sits currently in the state of South Carolina?
Good question. The main thing for South Carolina residents, most folks ask this question a lot. We do not have a mandatory boater education requirement for all ages.
Mm-hmm.
Our boater education is basically a born before date. If you are, not born before, but if you are not 16 years of age, if you're under 16 years of age, and you want to operate a boat of 15 horsepower or greater by yourself, a couple of qualifiers there, you must have passed a approved boater education course, either online in the classroom. A lot of variety of courses. You can go to a U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary course. You can go to a U.S. Power Squadron course or any of the DNR classes. All of our DNR classes are free. The Power Squadron courses and your Coast Guard Auxiliary courses do have a minimum fee, but they're still a good course. We list those out there.
How similar is it, almost to kind of like preliminary driver's ed, that kind of thing? Like, is it very similar, kind of that, just the basics of things?
It is the basics of things. It's basically understanding, as we talk about the rules on the road, the rules on the water. We cover those, and we'll actually cover those again tonight to kind of remind folks what the rules of the road are on the water. But it is a basic course. It gives you, it's not something you're going to leave the course and say, oh, I can drive a boat now. It's not that, but it's going to give you some basics of what the safety knowledges are, basic terms and terminology of the boat. To know what left and right, and just some of the things about your ATON system, your AC navigation system across the coast, inland systems as well, knowing what some of your different buoys mean so that you know what a no-wake zone is, so you know what a boating exclusion zone is, so you know where you're not supposed to be, where swimming areas are, so that boaters know the basics before they go out. Again, required for those under 16. Now, that doesn't mean the course is not good for everybody, because I think everyone would benefit from boater education course.
I know that I would, especially because I have a hard enough time driving on the road, much less the water. And just so I emphasize this point, that also means the jet skis too. Like, that's people think that the jet ski is just its own little animal, but that counts among the boating as well.
Absolutely, and that's definitely in the over 15 horsepower class. You're talking about jet skis that go 60, 70 miles an hour on the water.
Right.
So a lot of power, a lot of horsepower there. And they're making, again, those are, I'm glad you brought those up, personal watercraft, as we call them, or jet skis. The old jet ski, was the original Kawasaki, but personal watercraft, your Yamahas, your Wave Runners, jet skis, Polaris, all these different ones that are out there, or Bombardier, they have such power, but they're so cheap.
Right.
Considerably, you go buy a boat today, you can buy a center console boat now, you're going to be up in the $30,000, $40,000 range very quickly. You can buy a jet ski for less than $10,000.
Wow.
And get on the water. And you can pull somebody skiing. You can have somebody ride with you. A lot of options there. It's like riding a motorcycle on the water. It's a lot of fun. Again, it's inexpensive. It gets you on the water pretty quickly. So it's a very popular item. But until recently, they have been prone to people getting on them and not understanding how to operate them on the water. And a lot of times, particularly, they don't have brakes.
Right.
So, and a jet ski works by power. If you don't apply power, you can't steer. So steerage becomes a problem. And most of us, when we see something coming that is danger, a brick wall, if we're driving a car and we see a wall, we're going to do what?
Swerve.
Let off the gas, hit the brake. Or somebody runs out in front of us, or a ball runs out from us, something you're trying to stop.
Sit on the brake.
You're going to let off the gas and hit the brake. That's our natural reaction. That's what we've been taught to do over years of driving cars. So you get on a jet ski, something pops up, somebody falls off a ski in front of you, somebody bobs up out of the water you didn't see, or there's a stump or something. First thing you do, or somebody jerks in front of you with another boat, first thing you do is you let off the power and you lose steerage.
It's crazy. We will talk more, of course, as we continue here on Sports Talk's special SC Wild Edition here on this 3rd of July. If you have a phone number, or if you have a question for us, you can use the phone number 800-956-7266. Also email talkback at SportsTalkSC, Twitter at SportsTalkSC as well. We'll get into more sports thoughts as well throughout our 2 hours here. Captain Billy Downer in with us for the duration here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.
This is a special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk with Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Will Pelagic.
Welcome back to the special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk here on this 3rd of July. Will Pelagic, Captain Billy Downer here with you. The question comes across your mind about the outdoors, feel free to give us a call. 800-956-7266 at SportsTalkSC on Twitter is how you get in touch with us. We usually do these segments with Captain Billy once every 2 weeks, first and third Wednesday of every month, in the last half hour of the show, but felt it very, very important to at least inform those who might be going out on the water on the 4th of July about some of the things that they'll be having to look for, not just on the water, but you said later in the show, we'll probably talk about some of the great outdoors involving some of our furry friends that could be bears.
Sure. Talk about bears in a little while. We will do that. But, continue on something you talked about.
The jet skis.
The jet skis, PWC's personal watercraft. It's a great comment of yours to add those in there because, again, they are a popular boat in South Carolina, a popular watercraft because they're less expensive. Easy, highly maneuverable, and anybody can get into the boating world pretty cheaply again. So, again, I don't want to badmouth them because they are a great way for folks to get on the water. But folks that get on PWCs do need to understand that steerage is the main concern there. When you're driving a PWC, you need power to steer. And, again, we've taught ourselves over the years to let off the gas when we see something dangerous in front of us and hit the brake. Well, there's no brake on a PWC, but the industry has added some basically – fins that come out now when you let off the gas, which helps slow it down and help you with steering a little bit.
Yeah, the only reason I brought it up is because I was very much, like I said, when I was out in the water myself, saw kids driving them, and It's very much I would say a common practice that it's like, okay, just let the kid drive it. If he's age 12, age 13, age 14, it's not a big deal. But like you said, they need that direction, they need that course in order to be able to operate that boat, same as they would say, a sailboat or anything of that nature with a bigger motor.
Sure, but and keep in mind, we don't have a minimum age in South Carolina. There is no minimum age. If they can pass the boater education course, then they can drive the boat. So a young person, 10, 11, 12, can drive that jet ski by themselves if they pass boater education. Now, let me say something interesting in that. Folks would probably think that most of our boating accidents and PWCs involve young people. That would be wrong.
Really?
It's mostly folks middle age driving jet skis that have the accidents.
Is it now? One thing you always like to talk about involves the impairment when it comes to alcohol.
It's not always alcohol. No, it's just sometimes I just think we get overconfident. And again, it's just people unfamiliar and our natural reaction. Most accidents with our PWCs and jet skis are involving having some kind of steering problem, or they had some kind of danger involved in front of them, whether it be a dock or another boat, and they let off the power and they run into it because they lost steerage. That's what happens most of the time with a PWC accident.
Is mostly at night, or is it day, or is it
it's always at daytime most of the time because, again, remember, that's a good point too, PWCs cannot be operated after sunset.
Right.
They're not designed to have running lights on them, even though I've seen people try to put running lights on them. By law, you can only operate a PWC a jet ski type device from official sunrise to sunset.
It is Sports Talk and the SC Wild special here on this 3rd of July here. If you have a phone call for us, you can do so at 800-956-7266. We're talking with Captain Billy Downer about some of the things that you need to be safe on this July 4th, Independence Day. You talked about the accidents. What can boaters do to avoid accidents on the water? Sort of a rules of the road, if you will.
Main thing to do, main rule of anything else is keep a sharp lookout. Failing to maintain a proper lookout, and we're going to talk to some officers later tonight. We're going to get some phone calls in, talk to some officers from across the state on different lakes and kind of get their perspective. So it's not always Billy Downer telling you what he thinks.
True.
So you hear from others, but maintain that proper lookout. And you'll probably hear that again from somebody, I bet, because that's something we see all the time. Folks get on the water, they're enjoying it. And when we get on the water, we want to have a good time. We're relaxing. We're talking to our friends. Most of the time, we've got others in the boat with us. But when you fail to pay attention to what's going on around you, things happen. And that's what most of our boating accidents involve, is maintaining that proper lookout. The next one probably would be maintaining a safe speed and distance. Speed does involve, we don't have speed limits on the water. We do have no wake zones, areas of high congestion where we have people slow down. But speed is a concern on boating. There's times when there's lots of congestion, you need to slow down, particularly on the lake. Tomorrow, there's going to be a lot of people on Lake Murray, a lot of people on Lake Marion, a lot of people on Lake Kiowee. No matter wherever you are in the state, Intercoastal Waterway, Charleston Harbor, there's going to be people on the water. So slow down, back off the speed a little bit, off the throttle, take your time, look out for other boaters.
I don't understand why when you're out on the water, people feel the need to speed. It's because, again, I feel like you should take more care while you're out there. Well, pardon me.
Absolutely. Good play on words, but at the same time, when it's hot, and boy, has it been hot. Holy cow.
Yes, it has.
It feels like it's 120 out there. It's hot and muggy. When you're on the water, you kind of want to get going and get the wind in your face. And that's natural. We want the wind in your face to kind of cool things off. No doubt about it. You want to get moving, but you're right. Slow down. And the thing is, you get on the water, you want to go fast. You want to kind of cool off. And there's that also those people that don't like to go slow. And I'm one of those. I don't like to poke around too much. I kind of like to get where I'm going. But at the same time, there's a kind of a happy median.
Right.
Don't go so fast. Don't have to go full throttle. You don't have to go at idle speed, but you can go somewhere in the middle and find that safe zone where you can be able to avoid collisions, where you can back off and have that speed where you can be aware of what's going on and be able to react. You don't want to be going so fast that you can't react.
The one thing I'm glad you mentioned the hot weather, because, when I was out on the coast last week, the water temperatures were a lot higher than I was expecting. I mean, usually you expect the high water temperatures this year, but for as long as it was cold for us,
sure,
you still found, especially when the tide went out, you had the warmer water temperatures. You started seeing the fins, mostly with dolphins out in Hilton Head. It wasn't exactly any sharks. I know we've had some reports of that stuff, but again, I'm surprised. I don't know how you feel about this, but that the water temperatures did at least come up to temperature, if you will, based on how cold our winter was.
Well, it has to do with the heat and the hot air temperature over a long time will warm water up, particularly our lakes, which don't have, if your flows are down a little bit and the lake gets a lot of heat, the water's going to warm up. Typically, you don't see it till late July, August. Our water's probably already warm now. There's a time I remember when you go to the lake, our family loves going to the lake. There's a time when that lake almost feels like bath water, and it's so hot it's not enjoyable anymore as much. So that just has to do with the air temperature again, and the temperature in the water picks up faster with a lot of heat. We've had high heat this summer already. The spring has been hot, so the water temperature is up already. So
if you're out on the beach this weekend, take some caution, or at least this week, take some caution, especially because, like you said, especially when that tide goes out, you might see some things that you might not normally see because of how warm the water is.
Well, not necessarily. They're always the ocean's full of lots of things. The ocean, as I say, is full of lots of things that like to bite and sting. It's just the way it is out in the ocean. We don't like to be bit, and we don't like to be stung by jellyfish. So
true.
I've seen the news a little bit about those the sea lice. I haven't heard any reports of that in South Carolina.
That's good.
Which is a good thing.
What is the sea lice? What is that? What is that? Just a?
It is some type of small animal.
Microorganism.
Yeah. It's I guess it's not going to be an organism necessarily. It's going to be an animal more than anything else, or
right?
Some type of invertebrate. But we have not seen that, to my knowledge, in South Carolina yet.
Where have been the reports for most of that?
Florida is what I've seen.
Okay.
And they were talking about wearing T-shirts in the water. They get up on your T-shirt and things, so don't wear a T-shirt, which is hard to tell somebody when it's hot, sun, when you're trying to keep from getting sunburned. People do that in the water, wear shirts a lot to prevent sunburn. So hard there, but haven't seen any of that. Haven't heard a lot about jellyfish yet. Typically, our jellyfish flows come in late July, again, August is when you go to the beach and start looking for jellyfish to start floating in, just because of the different flows. And I'm not sure all the reasons why they flow in that time of year, but it's always seemed like in my memory in August has been the worst time for jellyfish. Have not heard a lot about sharks this year, which is a good thing. Again, sharks are part of the natural environment. They're out there. Lots of different species in South Carolina, but have not heard of any shark problems, interactions with humans so far that I've of note.
We will continue to chat here on Sports Talk in our SC Wild special edition here on this 3rd of July. We'll continue to talk here. 800-956-7266 is the phone number to get at us. Also, email talkback@SportsTalkSC and SportsTalkSC on Twitter. We'll come back. We'll talk about what's going on with some of the navigation light stuff as far as things go, and also about docking lights, and also some of the rules on life jackets as we continue here on Sports Talk's special edition here of SC Wild on South Carolina Radio Network.
This is a special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk with Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Will Pelagic.
Back here on Sports Talk, SC Wild's special edition here on this Tuesday. Hope you're enjoying yourself today. Will Pelagic, Captain Billy Downer here with you. If you have a phone call for us, 800-956-7266. Also, email talkback at SportsTalkSC on Twitter, and also on Twitter at SportsTalkSC, as well as Periscope. I know you had some thoughts about the Boogie Cousins signing at Golden State and just how they continue to just completely dominate everything when it comes to the NBA free agency cycle.
Of course. Yeah. My son and I got an argument about basketball last night. About Kobe Bryant, the new big salary. That's the bigger news to me is that, wow, what a salary.
Yes.
4-year contract, right?
For LeBron, yeah.
Yeah, LeBron, yeah. What was it, 4 year?
4 years, $153 million.
We figured that out today. That's around it got down to per week. We started breaking that down. You divide that out.
It's a lot.
4 years, you're looking at over, holy cow.
That's a lot of money.
$38 million a year.
Something like that.
And divide that by 12. I mean, 52 weeks, you ended up $750,000 a week.
Exactly. Which is about $10,000 a day, I would say, or like I think it was actually more like, my math is terrible. Well, it's about maybe $12,000 a day, basically.
Yeah, it's still at $750,000 a week.
That's crazy.
It's nuts.
It would be $100,000 a day. Pardon me. I did not do math at Mizzou.
That's okay.
That's
okay.
I got out. I tested.
He's making more in one day than
Corn makes.
I can't even work close in a year than I make in a year. I mean, most people make in a year, twice what people make in a year. I mean, it's not. I don't know. You hate to get in the debate about
whether they're worth it.
Sports getting too expensive, exactly, and you wonder why costs for tickets are so expensive. But at the same time, people enjoy going to games, and they get what they pay for. I guess
we're hoping that your time on the water is not expensive. That's why we have this boater safety edition of Sports Talk here on this July 3rd, getting you ready for the 4th. We left off with kind of talking about some of the boater safety rules. And like we talked about at night, we were talking about personal watercraft. Can't use those at night. But if you have some of the bigger boats, you obviously need to put some lights on there, possibly when those happen. Navigation lights are a big deal as far as that goes, Captain Billy.
Absolutely. Tomorrow, big day on the water. There'll be people out, particularly tomorrow night. There's going to be a lot of fireworks shows across the state. Lake Murray has a large one. Lake Marion has one. Almost all of our lakes have some type of fireworks show. Even down on the coast, they have fireworks shows. So it's going to be a big deal. Lots of boats on the water, and fireworks shows don't happen in the daytime. They happen at night, so you can see the beautiful displays. So people rush to get out there in their boats. And as it happens year after year, they get out there and they don't check their lights before they go. And they end up there. And when it's big congestion, everybody's out there anchored out, not as big a deal when your lights are off. I get that. People would say, what's the big deal? I'm out here, I can see the boat next to me. I'm 2 feet away. You're right. But when you go to leave and all these boats are hitting those, like you said, they're hitting the gas, they're taking the throttle to go back, those lights become a major issue.
Exactly. Because
boats can't see you. So having that white all-around light, having that red and green bow light is very important. Again, the white all-around light, most important, 360-degree visibility, and then your red and green bow light to let people know what direction you're going. They can tell between those lights what direction, if you're going left or to the right, so they know where to yield or give right away to you, or they can be the stand-on boat and continue on. Most people don't even understand those terms, but they know that when they see a boat coming toward them, they move out of the way. That's the main concern.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing. We kept on talking about the boater education course. I'm wondering how many people who are out on our waterways actually know the difference between those two sets of lights.
Probably not everyone. I'm going to say there are some folks that do know their laws and know the rules of the road for boating, but there's a majority of people that buy boats don't understand about nighttime navigation. A lot of people don't navigate at night. They don't go on the water at night because they don't feel comfortable, and that's fine. But again, on days like tomorrow and nights like tomorrow, when there'll be lots of people, they're going to go out there even if they're uncomfortable because their family wants to go see the fireworks show. Yeah. So they're going to go out there. And you just want to use caution. Make sure you check your lights before you go in the water. Make sure they're working. Make sure that all of them are working, not just a red and green bow light, not just a white all-around light. The white all-around light is the most important light, but make sure all those lights are working. The bow and your stern light are both working so that people can see you. Again, our officers will be out there. That's one of the most common violations we see on the July 4th evening is running light cases. And we can't let that go because it's your life and others' lives you're putting at risk if your lights aren't on so they can see you. Again, it becomes a navigation issue, and folks will run over the back of your boat. They can't see you. Again, because as soon as that fireworks show's over, it's a madhouse.
Oh, sure.
Everybody's heading for their landing, their dock, what have you. So lights become a major issue. So make sure you got your lights. Another point to make there, so many people have their dock lights on. The dock lights, the docking lights are the lights in the front of the boat that people use. A lot of them are LED now, very bright. A lot of times they're putting locations that make it very difficult to see your bow light. That's the red and green light. So people can't see which way they're going. They just see a bunch of lights in their face, and it's blinding, and they can't tell which direction you're going. And that can be dangerous. Cut your docking lights off when you're underway. Don't cut them on until you get towards your dock so you can see. That's what they're for. They're for docking or approaching that dock and getting close to an object like that. They're not for running in the water like a set of headlamps.
Yeah, but I say that a lot of people I've seen use them almost like headlights.
Absolutely.
They are not to use in that fashion.
No, they blind everybody else in the water. Makes, again, difficult to see your direction. And it's important for people to know what direction you're going so they know if they need to slow down, stop, or get out of your way.
Certainly so.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely. We're continuing on Sports Talk here. The SC Wild edition, our boating safety edition here on Sports Talk. Life jackets are something that I would say people probably poke a lot more fun at than they actually need to, because it is a safety thing, especially if you're not an accomplished swimmer, if you're out on the boat with people who are not necessarily able to survive, whether it's on the lake, whether it's in the ocean, wherever you are. Life jackets are important. And again, that's something obviously that you need as far as the law goes here in South Carolina.
Absolutely. Something we talk about we've talked about it several shows already this year, but it's worth repeating on a big day like tomorrow. Again, tomorrow's that day that you have more people on your boat a lot of times than normal. You're used to having the family, maybe 2, 3 kids on the boat with you, so you've got enough life jackets. But all of a sudden tomorrow night, everybody in the family wants to go on the boat to go see the fireworks show. So you end up with 10 or 11 people in your boat, your pontoon boat's maxed out with folks. And all of a sudden you get out there and you go, uh-oh, did I count the life jackets before I went? Again, the life jacket is like a seatbelt. It's there to save your life. And if you need it, you need to have it on board. So make sure you count the life jackets before you go out. Make sure, number one, you have enough for everybody on board. That's the first thing. We talk about it all the time. Number two, make sure it fits everybody on board. If you've got a bunch of young people on the boat, make sure you don't have a bunch of adult life jackets that won't fit them. So if they had to use it, and they fell in the water, it wouldn't pop off. They would stay on them. It'd be the right size. So number one, enough life jackets for everybody on board. Number two, that they fit the intended users on board the boat. Number three, make sure you're not pulling life jackets out from under the shelf, out in the shed that have got holes in them, the rips and tears, so that they're in good, workable, and serviceable condition so that when you need them, they will work. The stuffing doesn't come out.
Right.
Because orange doesn't do you any good. There's not any flotation inside of it.
And that's not just for, a boat with a motor. That's, like you said, pontoon boats, things that don't even have a motor, or even the jet skis too. That's a wide and fast rule.
It's life jackets are required for kayaks, canoes, things that don't have motors. Exactly. Even if you're out there,
sometimes I'll see some kayaks out on the river too. With people who are not using a life jacket.
People on the lake like to go out in paddle boats. There may be some out there paddle boats. They can be out in the water at night as long as they've got a light. That's what's required by law. So they could be out there, but make sure you've got a life jacket on board. I wouldn't be out on the paddleboard on a busy night like tomorrow night, but boats like canoes and kayaks can go boating at night. They're required to have a light they can shine to show somebody where they are.
But also need the life jacket.
They have to have a life jacket. So again, enough life jackets for everybody on board, that they fit everybody on board. They're in good condition. And number four, big one, make sure they're where you can get to them if you need them. Don't put them under the seat and lock them up.
We'll continue on Sports Talk and the SC Wild edition here as we continue with our boating safety. We're going to talk about drinking and boating, the rules about that, and also continue to talk about some of the stuff going on in the outdoors. We'll get the Bears later on, and also we'll talk to some officers throughout the state of South Carolina and what they're expecting when it comes to the 4th of July. Our special edition of SC Wild, Sports Talk for the 3rd of July, continues next here on South Carolina Radio Network.
This is a special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk with Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Will Pelagic.
Back here on Sports Talks SC Wild special here on July 3rd. Will Pelagic, Captain Billy Downer here with you. We're going to talk to some of the people who patrol the waters across the state, some here not only in the Midlands, but also in the upper state as well in our second hour here on SC Wild. We're going to take a break from the boating a little bit and talk a little bit about the bears. You said you wanted to get into some of the stuff if people are not on the water, but maybe out in the outdoors, trying to maybe explore some things going on there, Captain Billy?
Sure. We not to make the show all about boating. We've got a couple hours here to talk about. Let's talk about bears. We've talked about bears in the past. This time of year, bears are active. You'll see them out moving around, moving about. We talked about feeders and things. In our state, we're dealing with black bears. I've got a new appreciation for bears, having come back from a recent trip this past week at a conference in Alaska.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You buried the lead there. You didn't tell me you were in Alaska.
Really cool trip. Really cool part of the United States I've never seen before. Down here, when we run through the brush, we're looking for snakes. You're watching your feet. You don't want to get around a rock where a rattlesnake might be, or in the swamp, you're looking for cottonmouths and things. And up there, a little different. Up there, they've got the Alaskan brown bear.
Yes.
Much different from the grizzly bear, same species, a little different, a lot bigger. They eat salmon, so they're a lot bigger. You're talking about an animal that's 9 to 10 feet tall when they stand up. They weigh up to 1,300 pounds at maturity.
Can they play offensive line at Carolina?
They could probably eat the offensive line at Carolina. And they're a big animal. They're a big carnivore, which means they eat meat.
Yeah.
And around the city of Anchorage, they've got so many brown bears that come down out of the hill there. The mountains are all around them. They really have to be concerned about brown bears. In fact, bear attacks, bear maulings are something they deal with. This year has been particularly bad. They've had a mauling every week. We don't. It's a new appreciation to me.
Now, a mauling is
where a bear's attacked a person.
Gotcha.
They've bit them, clawed at them, something. They've had some people that have actually been killed by bears.
The equivalent of a bull gore, basically.
Basically,
yeah.
Yes, but probably worse.
Probably.
But people there, when they go hiking, they tell you don't go hiking after about 8 o'clock. It's light there till 11 or 12 o'clock at night, so people have a lot of time to go hiking after work. But they tell you don't go hiking. If you do go hiking, most people carry a 45 or 44 literally with them, a rifle. They carry bear spray, which some of the Alaskans say is just seasoning for the bear. So it's just funny, a different appreciation for bears. Here in South Carolina, we have the black bear. We don't have that kind of aggressive tendencies of black bear. Different animal up there with a brown bear. We've talked about that in past shows. We just wanted to reiterate that. Black bears are out in South Carolina now. You will see them. Give them due caution, give them their due space, particularly if you see a sow with cubs. You give her a space. She's going to protect her cubs, no doubt about it. But generally in South Carolina, we don't have bears chasing people down the street.
Right.
Up there, a little bit different story, a bear that's much more aggressive. And they talk about being bear aware.
Is that a huntable thing here in the state?
Yes, we do have bear season in South Carolina. And, our bear hunts come around the month of October in the upstate. And we do have a limited season on the coast. We have a limit of about 30 bears we can take on the coast and the coastal area. I say the coast, but basically from the coast inland, there's some counties in there also including that as well. We do have a limited bear draw. So they are a huntable species in this state, but they are a beautiful animal. I did get to see a black bear in Alaska, a little bit bigger bear than we see here.
Any family members down here from that or no?
No, no, but they do. We do have a lot of black bear in the state. Our population is doing very well, but I guess a blessing for us is they're not an aggressive animal here in this state. They don't attack human beings for the most part. They're basically like a deer. They see you, they're running off.
I say they're probably more scared of you than you are of them.
Absolutely. But just fair to mention, this time of year, bear, you might see those out in the mountains, in the swamps of our state as they move around this time of year.
Typical rules, just, be aware, be safe.
Yeah. We talk about in Alaska, they talk about making noise. When you walk, make noise, whistle. Don't surprise the animal. Make sure they know you're coming. Don't slip up on them. Same thing in this state. If you're walking around, talking, whistling, whatever, just so the animal knows you're coming. They're going to be gone by the time you get there. In our state, black bear's going to run off. So that's the main thing here. Also, one of the things I have appreciation for up there is they've got a tremendous salmon fishery in Alaska. Did not get the salmon fish, but I left And Sunday, they just shut down the king salmon fishery in Alaska.
Oof.
You know, people complain a lot, and I've been one to sometimes think our fishing rules are tough. Nothing like Alaska.
Oh, yeah?
They're so protective of their fish. You know, rainbow trout, things you can catch one fish up there. A lot of fishing to be had there, a lot of great fishing, but they're very restrictive on it. We're very blessed in this state to have a very good redfish population. We talk about the spot-tail bass on our coastlines. We got a great fishery there. Your speckled trout, your sea trout, great fishery as well. Flounder, you know, black drum, your sheep's head, lots of inshore fishing. We got great fishery here. And just to remember, July 1st just happened. So the redfish rules have come into effect now. Your limit now is 2 per person.
Ooh.
Same slot limit as before, but 2 per person, and now a 6 per person boat limit. So keep that in mind. If you're going to the coast this weekend, tomorrow, July 4th, or to the beach like lots of people do in July, if you go fishing, remember the redfish limit is now 2 per person, and it is 6 per boat. So if you're in a boat with 4 or 5 people in it, you can only catch 6 per boat.
Very, very interesting stuff. And we'll continue to talk more about what's going on, not only in the boats, but also what's going on in our second hour. I will be permitted, because Corn wanted to make sure we got recruiting in on the 3rd of July.
Absolutely.
Because recruiting takes no vacation, as he says, here on Sports Talk, with a little bit of some of the news and notes there with recruiting. We are waiting for an announcement tomorrow for Clemson 2019 pro-style quarterback Brendan Clark of Manchester High School, just outside of Richmond. He'll make his collegiate pledge on Wednesday night. He was previously committed to Wake Forest. Offers from Clemson, North Carolina, Duke, and Notre Dame, among others, but it's only visited the Fighting Irish. As we said earlier, the Tigers already have their QB pledge for 2019. Tyson Pumachan of Connecticut, who pledged Clemson's spring game in April. So if they don't get Clark, it's not a big deal. USC defensive back target Chris Steele of Bellflower, California, still reportedly undecided. Remember, he was going to announce on the 4th originally. Then came a report that he is committed to Southern Cal from Rivals.com. That report, according to many close to Steele, premature. They no longer list him as a Southern Cal commit. But, of course, talking last week with USC commit Ryan Helinski here on Sports Talk, Steele reportedly told Helinski his commitment is still open. Both players currently going through the final day of the Rivals opening in Atlanta. Steele has taken official visits to USC, Oklahoma, LSU, Florida, and Southern Cal. He will announce July 7th. Still, though, considered a very heavy Southern Cal lean. Just one offensive lineman on Clemson's 2019 recruiting board. That's Hunter Rayburn of Pensacola, Florida. They're still after a couple more, including Will Putnam of Tampa, after missing on a couple of top offensive linemen that they've offered earlier this year. Putnam visited earlier this year, and the contact between the two remains steady. He's also seen Florida, Florida State, Texas A&M, Auburn, and others in the recruiting process. Also has offers from Oregon, Texas, Miami, and Southern Cal. He has not cut his list down yet. He does still want to make sure that he can get out to see some of these other schools before he gets over to the fall. Of course, we're in a dead period right now, so we can't necessarily have any contact with them, but he can play either guard or tackle, 6'4", 280. He's still waiting to make a call on what he wants to do for the fall. Clemson in the top 5 with 2020 offensive lineman Miles Hinton of Atlanta. The others, Georgia, Michigan, Northwestern, and Stanford. 2020 linebacker Mikhail Sherman of Washington, D.C. was offered, of course, by South Carolina and Clemson. He has them in his top 10. He basically has Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, and a host of others in that top 10 as well. USC target athlete Trayvon Moss of Tulsa, offered by Arizona. Dorman offensive lineman John Jalot yesterday committed to Duke. And Burns linebacker Jalen Miller committed to Furman. And we said this for you yesterday. 2021 infielder Cole Messina of Somerville committed to USC on Monday. He is the Gamecocks' second commitment for the 2021 baseball recruiting class. If you have any questions about recruiting, or you have anything you want to learn about with recruiting, be sure to visit our website for our daily notebooks at sportstalksc.com, and on Twitter, use the hashtag STRecruiting. More with Captain Billy Downer here when SC Wild continues here in our second hour. We're going to talk to a couple of officers throughout the state on how they are going to handle the 4th of July holiday and what you need to know as far as boater safety goes in the state of South Carolina for Independence Day. Our special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk continues after this on South Carolina Radio Network.
This is a special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk with Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Will Pelagic.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, the special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk here on this third day of July, along with Captain Billy Downer, Will Pelagic here with you. We do have some breaking news to at least pass along. This actually came down a couple of minutes before the show began, but wanted to at least get this out while we can. Softball assistant from the USC, Matt Lyle, who basically had some very viral videos when it came to hitting in softball, and a very big part of that team that got to the Super Regionals this past year, losing to Arizona State. He's going to make the crossover from softball to baseball, and he's going to do so inside the Southeastern Conference, leaving USC to take over the head coach duties at the University of Missouri under head coach Steve Beezer there. So more fuel added to that rivalry between USC and Mizzou. Matt Lyle leaving USC to now be the new hitting coach at Mizzou for baseball. You can talk to us at 800-956-7266. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com and on Twitter @SportsTalkSC. This is a special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk. We're talking mainly boater safety here on this 3rd of July. We've covered some other ground, though, as well, including what's going on in the outdoors with bears and also some of the fishing that we've had on our oceans. But now we're going to talk about what's going on a couple of the lakes here in the upstate. We're going to talk to some officers, Captain, over here across the state, and we have Captain Ken Simmons ready to go on the line as well.
Yeah, my good friend Ken Simmons is on the line. Ken, you with us?
Sir.
Good to have you. Ken's been working Lake Murray for many years, has a lot of good experience there to tell us some knowledge. And I brought Ken on. Ken is the captain for Region 3 and over the officers in the area and also over Lake Murray. So he has a great deal of knowledge for Lake Murray tonight. Ken, I told you before we got on the show, first, thank you for being out here with us tonight. Quick question for you, though. If I was to ask you, what is the one thing when you talk about boating on Lake Murray that you would want to get out to the public? What is the one thing you see that bothers you the most on the lake?
Well, first of all, Captain Downer, thank you for having me. When it comes to the boaters on Lake Murray, the boating safety aspect of things, first and foremost, all of our officers were out there looking for the intoxicated driver, but the clues that we look for in particular are negligent operations, boaters that disregard the regulatory markers, in particular wake zones, exclusion zones, and shoal markers. And those are just some of the clues that alert us to checking these boaters to see if they're operating in a safe manner or if they're impaired.
Right. Now, you said, as far as you were talking about negligent operation, you were talking to me earlier about one of the things that gets you the most is people bow riding. What do you see there?
Yeah, that's absolutely, Captain. I was on our dive team for over 10 years, and folks that, especially that allow their children to bow ride on the boats, it's a real big no-no. Boats can hit a wake in a bad angle, or kids or some person's not, hanging on to the railing, whatever, and if they fall off the front of that boat, there's nothing back behind them but the prop of a motor, and there's nothing any driver can do fast enough to keep that situation from happening. And like I said, being on the dive team, I've seen the results of that far too many times. So bow riding in particular is one of the big negligent operations that we do.
And for folks that don't understand that, Ken, one of the things we see a lot, just to understand, we talk about bow riding, so folks understand that. That's when folks are sitting on the front of the boat, most commonly on a pontoon boat, john boat. They're sitting with their rear end on the front of the boat and their feet almost dangling in the water, right?
That's it. That's all it takes. They're just sitting there riding along with the feet hanging, and one wave, especially on a pontoon boat, if they fall in, those tunes have them trapped. They're going straight back to that motor.
Just overall, Captain Simmons, how, I guess my question would be, how much do you see the exponential rise of negligent boat operation when it comes to the 4th of July holiday, especially also when we get here deep in the summer, the 4th of July weekend? I know you all had your fireworks show this past weekend. How much does that rise as we come across this part of the year?
It does go up a pretty good bit. What we notice a lot are we tend to see a lot more boaters that generally are not out there on the week-by-week basis, so therefore they don't have the experience or the knowledge of the law. So that might be the one time or two times a year that they put a boat in, and they're the ones that'll do those type of activities.
Absolutely. So, we talked about boater education, Ken, earlier in the show, and most folks don't go to a boater education class. We try to promote that as much as we can as possible. But, folks, we do have a lot of water in the state. People get on the water, and these weekends is when everybody wants to get on your boat, and you may have 4 people on your boat. Normally we talk about that too. And today or tomorrow, you'll have 10 or 12 that want to get on the pontoon with you.
That's it. And first and foremost, you have to have the right safety equipment. You got to have that serviceable, wearable life jacket that fits every person on that boat.
Well, we have worn that out in this show, but we can't wear it out enough. Life jackets are important. What else as far as safety equipment, Ken, in your recollection and things you've worked on that lake, are things you see more common than not as far as safety equipment?
The next big safety equipment feature that I think will pertain to the boats that particularly stay out at night. They got to have their lights. State law says these lights need to be seen for 2 miles, especially the anchor light. And we see some people that it looks like nothing more than a candle. You can't see for 200 yards, much less 2 miles.
Right.
So good bright navigational lights, but you don't need to be running docking lights, which obstruct the view of the navigational light.
Right. We just covered that right before you got on too. That's a good reminder though. The docking lights are more and more popular, aren't they?
Not for driving across the lake.
Right. They're not a set of headlamps, are they?
Exactly.
As far as some of the other things, Captain Simmons, anything special that you guys have running on that is specific to Lake Murray that people want to watch out for, or things that events that are possibly going on that folks need to be aware of and at least keep in mind as they go out there tomorrow afternoon and evening?
Well, I think you mentioned earlier, yes, we had our big fireworks show this past Saturday. But there will be, I'm sure, a few other smaller ones out and about the lake. The only other, I'd say, next largest fireworks show tomorrow evening will be up at Big Man's Highway 391 Bridge and the Big Saluda River. So that would be
a lot of congestion. There'll be boats wherever there's fireworks, right?
That is correct.
Right, and we talk about this all the time, Ken. Our officers are working out in the lake. Particularly these big weekends, we're going to have officers out there that are out there mainly to help keep everyone safe, make sure that others can enjoy the lake as much as everybody else around them, right?
That's it. We want everybody to have fun. We want everybody to get home safe at night. But like you said, at the same time, we're all out there, and if you're operating that boat impaired, you will be dealt with. Absolutely.
Impairment. We talk about impairment for a minute before we get off. What is your thoughts on that, on particularly in this area? We talk about designated drivers. Are we seeing that more and more on the lake now, or do people continuing kind of to test it a little bit?
A little bit of both. We are seeing more designated drivers, and I'm glad to see that, but it's still out there. Some people just won't learn.
Absolutely.
And, some people have to learn the hard way.
Absolutely. So, again, remember our boating under the influence law. Basically, people always get stuck on the 0.08, but one of the things I know that Kim would say along with me is if you're going to drink and be on the water, make sure you have somebody that's driving the boat other than you. It's not worth it because of the lake. We talk about the lake effect. We talk about stress effect, the heat of the day. 2 beers on the water is like 6 on land. Make sure if you're going to drink on the water, nothing illegal about that, but make sure you have somebody else driving the boat.
That's it.
Captain Simmons, we appreciate the time. Be safe out there with you and your crew. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and hope you and yours have a happy 4th.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Let me come on.
That is Captain Ken Simmons joining us here on Sports Talk, patrolling the Lake Murray area and making sure that folks are safe on this July 4th. We'll continue to talk more, and we'll continue to talk more about that lake effect stuff as well here when Captain Downer rejoins us here on Sports Talk, and also get you some more of your thoughts on how you can be safe on this 4th of July as Sports Talk continues. Our special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk here on South Carolina Radio Network.
This is a special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk with Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Will Pelagic.
Back here on SC Wild, special edition here of Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Willie P. along with Captain Billy D. here as we continue. It was good to get the perspective of Captain Simmons on some of the things at Lake Murray, and it just kind of goes to show that, again, a lot of these things fall under the realm of common sense.
Absolutely.
But obviously, especially when you're talking about the thing that we were talking about earlier with the drinking, a lot of that becomes impaired. And you've talked about the lake effect before, and I don't want you to gloss over that.
Sure.
Just to kind of give people a review as to why we say designated driver on the water as opposed to, maybe someone's okay having a beer or two when they drive on the road. It is a much different scenario, though, when you're operating a watercraft.
We talk about the lake effect, also known as the stress effect on the water. It's something that we really know about. We just don't think about. When you're out there outside, it's hot, the heat of the sun, that dulling noise, kind of that constant dulling noise of that motor, the action of the boat on the water up and down, side to side. All these things add stress to our body that affect us, so that alcohol will affect you. It's been shown to affect you as much as 3 times as much on water, so that the proverbial "I had 2 beers" ends up being more like 6 beers on land if you have 2 on water. That may be hard to kind of grasp for a minute, but if you think about all the effects, the sun, the wave action, the sound of that motor, all those things dull our senses and make alcohol affect us that much more. So the main thing to get out of that is, if you're going to boat and you want to drink, have somebody on the boat that is not drinking to be the designated driver. That'll keep you out of trouble, keep you safe, and keep everyone around you safe, so that you can return safely back to the hill as well as everybody else.
It's obviously something that folks are cognizant of, but at the same time, it's something that you have to continue to keep people aware of, and it also can lead to certain things like negligent operation, and those are some of the things that Captain Simmons went over. And
those are some of the signs of what we see.
Yes.
And when you go to that boat, that gets your attention. This boat just went through the no wake zone full speed. This boat almost hit this other boat. They swerved at the last moment. They're running too fast through this congestion. What's going on here? And you go to stop that boat, and the next thing you see is they're impaired. They're under the influence. Again, we talk about the designated driver. Well, too many times people get on the water, they go to the sandbar, they go to the area where they're meeting everybody else to have a good time. Nothing wrong with that. But they get there, they haven't thought about designated driver. Everybody on the boat's drinking. Now all of a sudden there's nobody to drive back. And so the owner of the boat goes, I can handle it. I'm the only guy driving my boat. I'm going to take care of it. And it doesn't have to be a guy. It can be a girl. I don't mean to be man-centric. It could be a woman as well.
Understand.
But they say, this is my boat. I'm taking care of it. And
not always the case.
But you fall into that trap of, okay, everybody's been drinking, so I'm the best, most knowledgeable person drinking. I'm going to drive the boat. Well, that's not always the best choice, because now you're under the influence. You're driving the boat. Just because you know about boats doesn't mean the alcohol is not going to affect you. So thinking before you go out, having somebody with you that's not going to be drinking, that you designate as a driver before you get to that party, before you get to that sandbar, so that you can safely return home. That's the main thought.
And as you said, 2 beers on the water is equal to 6 on land.
Absolutely.
That's something that's very, very hard to grasp unless you've been a part of that.
No doubt. Let's expand on negligent operation for a minute.
Please.
Captain Simmons talked about negligent operation. What is negligent operation? Well, it's any action that would be considered, not to use the word twice, but negligent or careless.
Mm-hmm.
So anything, if you see that person on the way, you went, that wasn't very smart, that's probably negligent. Some examples of that: operating a boat at more than idle speed in the wake zone, failing to keep a proper lookout for the boats, operating too fast for conditions on the water, bow riding, when you have people on your boat. Again, bow riding is when a person's sitting on the front of the boat with their legs dangling over the side of the bow, maybe touching the water, maybe not, but where if the boat came to an abrupt stop, they would be thrown overboard, or if you hit a wave, it could throw them overboard where your boat may run over them. That's called bow riding. So folks that that don't see a boat, turn hard to the right, to miss it, necessarily maybe not negligent. But if you see jet skis out there and they're out there spraying each other, absolute when they're spraying. In other words, they're heading towards one another and turn at the last second to spray another. That's a great example of negligent operation. Not to pick on jet skis again, but it's one of the things we do see a lot. But negligent operation can mean a lot of things. It's unsafe, any unsafe act on the water that an officer sees. And the fine for that goes on up. I mean, you're in the hundreds of dollars for fine for a negligent operation. Again, when you're protecting life and limb, you can't put a dollar figure on that.
It's certainly something. And you know, the wake zones, I think people are almost kind of take those for granted. But
sure.
Those are, I mean, those are out there for your safety, especially with buoys, especially in low areas that don't necessarily have as deep of a water. And that's, again, that's more for your safety and also for the safety of the boat as well.
Absolutely. The wake zone, your wake zones are there for areas of congestion, fueling stops, where you've got landings a lot of times. So they're there for a very specific reason, because there's going to be expected to be a lot of boating traffic there. So you need to be slow. And when we say a wake zone, means it says slow to idle speed. Idle speed. What does idle speed mean? We talk about it a lot, but what does idle speed really mean? Basically, simply put, for a boater, take your boat all the way back to neutral, one click forward. As in, when you push that throttle forward to one click out of neutral, that's probably going to be idle speed for your boat. Every boat's a little different. Many times you see people dragging that back into the boat, a lot of white froth. You see a lot of white froth behind the boat, a big wave behind your boat, you're not at idle speed. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks tell us, well, I can't steer at idle speed. Well, understand that, but in a no-wake zone, you are required by law to be at idle speed. So take your time. It may be hard to steer, but take your time. You can't speed up and create that wake, because you may damage other boats, which you're responsible for in a wake zone if you do that, and you may hurt someone else.
Of course, we're continuing our chatter on negligent operation. Not just when you have somebody have negligent operation, obviously it can be something that's dangerous, but also if you're caught by one of your officers or somebody out on the water, it could do damage to your ability to patrol a boat, or at least to captain a boat, if you will, when you're on the water.
Sure. We go from negligent operation to something called reckless operation. Mm-hmm. Reckless operation is even more serious. Reckless operation includes things, again, not limited to, but includes weaving through congested traffic at more than idle speed, jumping the wake of another vessel within 200 feet of that vessel, which means you're jumping in such a way that other boats oncoming can't see you.
I say, jumping the wake. Explain that to folks who might not understand.
So a boat, traveling down the wake is going to make a wake behind them. If you're running pretty good speed, you're going to have a wake behind you. The wake is the wave that your boat creates as it goes through the water. Mm-hmm. Kind of for every action is an equal and opposite reaction.
Right.
That wave is very tempting for boats. You want to get right behind your boat and jump it to launch out and get out of the water. Two things going on there. When you do that behind that boat, you're in that blind spot for other boats. Then also you're going to jerk out there, hit that wake and jump, which means you're going to leave the water. When you leave the water, again, you lose the ability to steer and control that boat very well. So two things going on there: losing the ability to steer, blind spot for other boats, oncoming boats. It's a problem that can cause a very serious action, cause somebody to get hurt or even killed. So crossing that path, wake of another, where the visibility around the vessel is obstructed, maintaining a collision course with another vessel or object and swerving away at the last minute. Those can be also considered reckless. Now, the penalty for reckless operation is greater than negligent operation, because basically the violation is such that you're placing life and limb at jeopardy. So, again, it's going to be a higher fine. In addition to that fine, if you're convicted and found guilty of reckless operation in court, your privilege to boat is immediately suspended until you take and successfully pass a boater education course. Doesn't matter if you've taken one in the past, you've got to take it again.
And we don't want to get it to that point, but at the same time, this is a communal thing. We want to have people be out there and be safe and enjoy themselves, but do so in a safe manner.
Absolutely. Our officers aren't out there to keep you from having a good time. They're not out there to keep you from enjoying the water, but they are out there to maintain safety for you and everyone else. Too many times our officers catch a bad rap for being out there, for checking folks, checking safety equipment, and they're there to protect your safety, your children's safety, and the boaters around you. They're not out there to ruin a good time. They're out there to make sure that you're safe and everyone else around you. And I applaud the work that they do. Our guys do a lot of good work. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day.
It's Captain Billy Downer. I'm Will Pelagic. We'll continue with SC Wild's special edition here of Boater Safety. We'll get into some more things and also about what the boater education course includes, and talk to another one of our great officers throughout the state, including the upstate, as we continue here on South Carolina Radio Network.
This is a special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk with Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Will Pelagic.
Back here on Sports Talk's special SC Wild edition with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, along with Captain Billy Downer, yours truly, Will Pelagic, here with you. It's now time, Captain, to talk to another one of our officers in the state. We've already hit the Midlands with Captain Ken Simmons, and now First Sergeant Daniel Baker's on with us to give us a check of what's going on in the upstate.
Absolutely. Daniel, not on the phone.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Daniel, you've been working here over 10 years, been a first sergeant for over 4 now. You work in Lake Thurman or, as they say, Clarks Hill. Well, one of the things we're talking about boating safety tonight, thinking about, of course, July 4th, going to be a big weekend across South Carolina on the water. We all know that as officers. You and I talked earlier today just talking about boating safety and the things that you think and the things that you see on the water on Clarks Hill and the upstate. When you think of boating safety, what is the thing that comes to mind that you see a lot that people may be doing, I hate to say doing wrong, but what's the thing that comes to mind when you think of boating safety?
One of the things, honestly, that I think that people take for granted most, especially during these busier holidays, is just being vigilant and the captain of the boat keeping a proper lookout. On not just for himself, but the surrounding areas. So that he has the best interest for those in his boat in mind. Right,
and you talked about that. When we're out there on the lake, when you've got your friends with you, you're often tend to talk to them and not necessarily keep your attention on the people in front of you.
Absolutely. It's not uncommon to encounter a boat. And when I refer to the captain of the boat, I'm talking about that, the man or woman that's in charge of the steering wheel and navigating the boat properly. A lot of times you'll pull up alongside a boat and they're so heavily in a conversation, with the passengers behind them. I mean, I've seen people that's holding the steering wheel with one hand and have, stepped around and literally talking to the person sitting in front of a console. So they're not aware of their surroundings or what's in front of them or to the sides and things like that.
And they're not even really in control of the boat, are they?
Exactly. They're more involved in a conversation than anything else.
Does that mean we were talking about negligent operation a little bit and some of the examples of that? I know you were talking about bow riding too. Is that something you see a lot on Clarks Hill?
You typically can see a good bit of it, especially during the busier holidays. You'll have people from out of town that visit and things, and you'll catch a lot of folks that are sitting on the front of a pontoon or a deck boat, or we've even seen them on the front of John boats dragging their feet in the water and things like that. And I always caution people after encountering them with that. Let them know that these boats are designed to pull water under a boat into the motor. And if you were to fall off of the front of, if an unfortunate situation happened, and you were to fall off the front of that boat, it's designed to pull you right with the water, and you will get hit by the prop.
That's correct.
Which can end up, fatal in most cases. It causes, a fatality or great bodily injury just from a prop.
No doubt about it. Steel prop does not stop for bone or skin, does it?
No, it does not. Even on small, you see a 10, 15, 25 horsepower motor.
First Sergeant Daniel Baker joining us here on Sports Talk and SC Wild. I asked this of Captain Simmons earlier, your colleague in the Midlands. How much does, I guess, negligent boating operation or reckless boating operation, how much does that increase over this time of year when you're going to get more high traffic on the waterways, say on the 4th of July and also the 2 weekends that boundary that?
Typically, you'll find on the holiday weekends you have a lot of people visiting from out of town. They're not familiar with these bodies of water. They're not familiar with shoals and rock bars. You see it increases significantly during the holidays. You have more people in a boat, so there's more distractions. So the captain of the boat's not keeping an eye out for, not only for his boat, but for boats around him. I had explained to Billy earlier today, this past weekend, we had a boat where two individuals jumped out to swim. The wind came up, the boat was drifting fast, and they can swim. Luckily for them, there was someone operating the boat that was keeping an eye out, not only for himself but others, and he noticed it and he rendered aid, and ultimately he saved two people's lives because of it.
How much? I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, Sergeant Baker, because when you're out there on the boat, you not only have a responsibility to yourself, but you have a responsibility to the other people in your boat, but also a great responsibility to those who share the water with you.
Absolutely. And, we were talking earlier today, it's a common thing now for folks to go to Academy Sports or, these different outdoor places and buy kayaks. Most of the kayaks are going to be a neutral color, a light brown or green, some even camouflage. And they blend in well with the water, and they're a low profile. So if you're not paying attention like you're supposed to while operating a boat, those people are at risk. And, the waterway is to be shared with them just as much as anyone else. And it's really, really, our responsibility as a boat captain to not only be aware of what's going on in our boat, but also in the boats around us, because you never know when they're not paying attention. So, I always try to let people know, you need to make sure that you're paying attention, that 90 degrees from left to right and in front of you.
Absolutely. The other thing too, Daniel, we see this a lot as officers have been on the water. You see the big weekends, people are going to be out skiing. They're going to be out on tubes. And when you got people on tubes and kids on the big tubes you got now, three to a tube, and they hit a wake and it dumps 3 people in the water, all of a sudden life jackets always aren't bright colors either. And the kids pop
exactly
up.
Right.
They pop up and you're riding down the water at full throttle, and all of a sudden, boom, somebody pops up. You got to be looking and kind of expecting for that person to fall off.
Exactly right. And, even wearing a life jacket, all you have above the water is head and shoulders.
Right.
And I've seen an instances where someone has fallen off of a tube, and the operator of the boat is so involved in the conversation that they just keep going. And you have to actually pull up and sit with them until they finally notice, yes, they fell off, and come back and get them. It's just holiday weekends. You got higher traffic. Everyone's having a really good time, which is what we want. But safety should be, the utmost concern when it comes to this.
Absolutely. When we talk about safety and big holiday weekends, alcohol becomes a part of our conversation. Folks asking questions. What is your advice for folks when they go on the lake and alcohol?
Have a sober driver, and not only have a sober driver, have a sober driver who is, can operate the boat. We see a lot of times where someone will designate a driver who has very little to no boating experience.
Right.
So ultimately, you got someone sober that's operating the boat for you, but you have someone intoxicated showing them how to, run the throttle and steer the boat. So, ultimately, he or she that's operating, they're totally distracted the entire time. So we try to tell people, if you're an experienced boater, it's just one day. Try to be responsible for that day.
I want to ask you this, Sergeant, and we'll get you out of here on this question. But what advice do you have for somebody who is out there on the boat and might be caught with their hand in the cookie jar, proverbially? What advice do you have if they unfortunately have the displeasure of being pulled by somebody from your department?
If someone gets pulled by our department, you're talking about if someone's intoxicated?
Either intoxicated or just accused of negligent operation, something of that nature.
Yeah, someone would like that. They more than likely on a holiday weekend, they're going to get a ticket. If they're intoxicated, we take that very seriously. They will be arrested and charged with boating under the influence. That's something that we take very seriously. And the reason we do so is because if they're on the water intoxicated, there's a good chance that they're going to get off the water and operate a vehicle in the same manner.
That's right.
So we take that very seriously.
There's no reason why, people we talk about, a lot of influences. I mean, a lot of emphasis has been put on people driving drunk on the road, and the same person you don't want driving drunk in your neighborhood, you don't want driving that boat around you either.
Exactly. You don't want the guy or girl that's intoxicated driving the boat in the area that your kid may have fallen off of an inner tube as well.
Absolutely.
Because and even if you look at another aspect, if you've got a sober driver, but you've got 12 or 15 intoxicated people on the boat that's hooping and hollering and playing the radio and dancing, that's a distraction in itself.
Thank you, Sergeant Baker. Back with our finish here on Sports Talk. You still with us there, Sergeant?
This is a special SC Wild edition of Sports Talk with Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Will Pelagic.
Final segment of our 3rd of July special, and we appreciate all the folks from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, not limited to Captain Billy Downer, Captain Ken Simmons, and First Sergeant Daniel Baker, who have joined us here throughout our special. And again, we're doing this more as a public service for y'all who are out there wanting to enjoy yourself on the water here this 4th of July, and doing this so that you do so safely and that you do so and the safety of those around you. Programming note for you, tomorrow on Sports Talk, we will have our review of spring football for the programs throughout the state. We're going to talk to coaches from South Carolina, Clemson, as well as Furman, Citadel, Coastal Carolina, and Wofford, and get you a recap of spring football, a look ahead to the fall, and also a look ahead to what we'll see in the SEC and ACC for those programs as well that are of in-state import, both South Carolina and Clemson. Phil Kornblut and I have that special recorded program for you, which will air tomorrow on the 4th of July. We'll be back, both Professor Tom Hayes and myself, on Sports Talk on Thursday. We'll have our usual Thursday fare with Mike Morgan on the Move. Also, Fran Halloran, the money coach, will join us as well. And we'll also talk to Charleston Southern head football coach Mark Tucker. He will join us on Thursday's edition of Sports Talk here on South Carolina Radio Network. As a review point here, Captain Billy, if people haven't been with us throughout the 2 hours, just kind of give us an overview of what we've talked about, not just with yourself, but our 2 officers in the Midlands and the Upstate, which again, kind of echo a lot of the same topics that you bring up and just make you sound like you're not just doing this for your health.
Absolutely. It is good to hear from Ken and Daniel both to kind of re-emphasize things that you may hear from me a lot. You don't want to sound like a broken record, but the reason why we say these things so much is we see it. In 20 years of a career as a game warden and enforcing boating laws on the lakes, you get a lot of opportunity to see the good and the bad. So you got a lot of experience talking there. And Ken and Daniel also add to that what their experience they've seen as well. So, again, things you heard, a couple constants. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. There's going to be a lot of people on the water, and maybe not necessarily people that are always used to being on the water. So keep that in mind. Folks, if you're not on the water every day, doesn't mean you can't go on the water tomorrow. But when you're out there, just keep an eye out. Keep that proper lookout. Be expecting people around you to fall. There's going to be people out there skiing, having a good time, riding on a float or riding on that big inner tube. And they make those big ones now that 3 or 4 people can get on. So with the traffic and the wake action out there, waves, just remember that folks are going to fall off and be expecting them to pop up. And remember, as Daniel said, when they pop up with that life jacket, just the head and shoulders are still showing even though they're floating. So again, maintain that proper lookout, be vigilant, look for people around you, watch one of the boats. It's kind of like defensive driving the car, but even to the nth degree when you've got people out there that are being pulled and falling off.
And I'm glad that Sergeant Baker brought up the whole responsibility point of, if you're out there and you see somebody on the boat who, again, like the situation he talked about with the 2 gentlemen who were swimming,
sure,
and the boat was going too fast away from them, I don't want to say it's your duty, but it almost is your duty if you're out there on the water in a commingling type sense. That's where the boater education courses come in, where you might have to save somebody who might be out there if they're possibly in distress.
Absolutely. Again, that's part of keeping your eyes open. You're looking for other boats, looking for people in the water, and if there's somebody out there needs help, you need to be looking at them too. And too many times, that's a story that repeats itself year after year. Folks either swimming by the boat, and the current pulls the boat away from them, and they can't get back to the boat, and too often people drown. And a lot of some of our boating accidents are involving people that are doing just that, swimming off in the boat and can't get back to the boat. And that's terrible. It's hard to tell somebody wear a life jacket in the water is a good swimmer, but be careful when you're swimming around that boat, particularly in heavy current or where the boat may float away. Stay next to the boat where you can get back quickly to it.
Where do you think if folks do want to, again, take advantage of swimming, is that something you want to do closer to the no-wake zones? Are there particular zones, depending on whether you're on Lake Marion, Hartwell, Lake Murray? It just kind of depends on where you are in relation to other boats. Where do you think is a safe spot for swimming?
Don't be swimming in the main area where people are running and operating. That's never a good place to stop the boat and get out and start swimming when there's boats zooming by you. Any of your channels that are frequented by folks for navigation, stay away from those. Get off in a small cove somewhere to the side where it's calmer. Again, tomorrow's going to be a hard day to find that because people are going to be everybody's going to be looking for that little smooth cove to get off onto the side. And everybody's going to be looking for a place they can ski where the water's smooth, or they can pull somebody on a tube where they won't get rattled so much on the tube. So it's going to be hard to find those little coves, but you want to get out of the main channel of where everybody's operating.
So we've talked about the boater education courses. You need to have them if you are operating a boat under the age of 16. You can still operate a boat as long as you have that course in your purview and have that passage in there. How can folks take a boater education course if they are under 16 or if they want to have that information for themselves as an adult?
Absolutely. Anybody interested in taking a boater education course can visit the DNR website. We are website friendly now. Our world is dnr.sc.gov. That's dnr.sc.gov. Click on the education tab at the top. You'll see boating education to the side. Click on that. You'll see two ways to take the boater education course. Again, we have a classroom calendar there. You can click on find a course near you, or you can take the online course as well as the South Carolina online course. South Carolina accepts any NASBLA approved course. There's many of them out there that are online that you can take from $29.50 to less than that. But the good courses, typically you get what you pay for in a course online. And yes, it's going to cost you to take an online course. That may sound expensive, but it's expensive for these folks to build these courses, put the right technology in it to where you can really learn.
It might be expensive for you to take. It might be more expensive to you if you don't take it.
Absolutely. But remember, we offer free classroom courses throughout the state. Look at our classroom calendar, go to the same website, go to our DNR webpage, look for the education icon, then look for boater education. Once you get to the boater education page, find a course near you, and you can put your zip code in and it'll find a course, this classroom course that we teach. Those are free.
It's unfortunate that we could not give you classroom credit for earning that, having listened to the 2 hours of this radio program, because I feel like I've taken it already here throughout this. I'm sure there's a lot of other things in detail that goes into the boater education that we have not talked about here in our 2 hours.
Absolutely, but we are certainly hitting the high points. Remember this, folks, tomorrow, if you go out in the water, we want you to have a good time, enjoy the water, be safe, watch out for others. Make sure you have enough life jackets on board for everybody. Pay attention to those around you. Maintain a proper lookout. Maintain a safe speed and distance. And one more thing before we go today.
Sir.
Want to make sure to remind folks, July 4th is a free fishing day. So no license required tomorrow. I almost forgot that, but July 4th is a free fishing day. Just check that on our web, just making sure that was correct. For 2018, July 4th is a free fishing day.
So what does that mean for folks out there?
They can go fishing without a license tomorrow.
And that's just for catch, but the same rules for catching and stuff will apply, like with the redfish.
Limits and all. It doesn't mean you can catch anything you want, but it means you don't have to have a license tomorrow to fish.
Okay. And again, the redfish limit, that just as we talked about earlier, that went into effect. The limit increased
July 1st. It goes back to 2. It was 3 for several years now, but the limit is now 2 fish per person. Same slot limit applied. Same size limit was in there, and then you have no more than 6 per boat. It's a boat limit now. So if you're on a boat with more than 3 or 4 people, that's going to come into effect. 3 people, you can still catch 6 fish, but 4 more, only 6 fish.
Where will you be on this 4th of July, sir?
I will be on one of our Great Lakes.
Oh, you're not going to you're not telling people where you are? You're going to be,
no, I'm going to keep
stealth?
it a secret. Little surprise, little stealth mode. Yep.
Well, we certainly appreciate all the work that you and yours do to keep everything safe throughout the South Carolina waterways, coastways, and also the wilderness. And certainly it's been a big part of our mission today to make sure to educate folks who are out on the water. And any last parting words to share to the folks?
Again, just be safe. Be cognizant of others around you when you're on the water. Have a good time tomorrow.
We wish all of you who listen to Sports Talk religiously a safe and happy 4th of July holiday. Again, tomorrow we will be giving you our pre-recorded edition of Sports Talk, giving you a review of the spring and what was going on for football throughout the state, and also a preview of the ACC and SEC with Phil Kornblut and myself. We'll be back with a regular live Sports Talk on Thursday with yours truly and Professor Tom Hayes, as well as Friday as well. Thank you so much for listening to our special South Carolina Department of Natural Resources edition of SC Wild and Sports Talk here on South Carolina Radio Network. For Captain Billy Downer, I'm Will Pelagic saying so long and thanks for listening. You've been listening to Sports Talk and South Carolina Radio Network.